Welcome back to Ben and Bran See a Movie. In honor of the fact that we are talking about School of Rock today, I have a really cool classic rock riff that I'd like to share with everybody. There you go. That's just a little treat for you.
Hey, look, just
like Buddy Holly.
And the copyright laws are kicking in. We gotta stop right now.
Trust me, copyright wouldn't attack you for that, Ben.
No, that wasn't. I think that was too close to the original. I think we'd get copyright strike.
You say the words copyright and YouTube censors are already like up in arms.
Yeah, that's true. But then we gotta say it more, so they gotta know where to look.
Yeah, Susan.
So we're just talking
Susan
copyright.
Pulls out her
today.
dual katanas, and she's like, "It's time to cut off some funding."
Yeah.
So
it's scary, fam. It's scary out there for YouTubers like us.
Yeah.
Anyway,
famous YouTubers.
I'm Ben Friedman.
I'm Branson and Delicato.
And today we have a special guest joining us, someone who's been on the show quite a lot, Jalaal Ahmad.
At this point, maybe more than me.
It's
especially in recent months.
Definitely this year. I think the debate would definitely be in 2022. Who's the real co-host?
The real co-host.
Ben and Jalaal see a movie?
Honestly,
BJ see a movie? Oh.
Ben, I was waiting for a chance to tell you, but Branson and I have started our own podcast. So you're actually the special guest on this episode.
Yep, Jalaal and Bran are taking over.
Well, this is quite embarrassing. I've been taken over from my own channel.
Jalaal and Bran stage a coup.
There we go. There it is.
Coup.
That's so punk rock of us.
It is so punk rock, which is a great transition, Branson, by the way.
We stuck it to the Ben.
Yeah, for them, stuck it to the man. The man!
The man.
The man. Which is a great transition to talk about the movie, which we are talking about today, School of Rock. Richard Linklater's 2003 School of Rock starring Jack Black. And we decided this movie because there was nothing really out in theaters right now. There was nothing coming out this weekend. And we ended up just deciding, we're like, okay, let's kind of do like a back to school type episode.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, I know. Here's a teacher. I'm sure Brenna, your wife, is not particularly thrilled, Branson.
Actually, you know what?
Is she ready?
She is very excited because
she gets her own classroom this year.
The kids that she's been nannying for this summer have been pretty tough.
Yeah.
They've been kind of wild. So she's definitely looking forward to a classroom where she has more power and nicer kids who aren't in their teens, which, you know.
Yeah, to quote the movie that we're talking about, if they get out of line, she can just like smack them back in the line.
Yeah, I have no
She's
problem.
She's a real hard ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so we decided, we're like, let's talk about School of Rock because it ultimately was like, okay, it is a movie that relates to back to school, or not really back to school, but just school in general. It's Jack Black, which I realized, Branson, we've never talked about a Jack Black movie on this podcast.
We have not. And I've had this dream. I think it's okay to say this. And then, you know, one day if this actually does happen, we'll be over.
Yeah, you look like a genius.
But my dream and the reality that I'm manifesting is that one day we will do an episode on like Nacho Libre and have Jack Black as a guest. I don't know why Jack Black is my dream guest, but he is. So I'm just like manifesting that energy. And now that it's out, I need everyone to like put their hands on their monitor and just like send me those vibes. And we can make this a reality.
So if you're listening, that means you don't get the Nacho Libre podcast unless we get Jack Black. Therefore, if you have the power to bring Jack Black on this show, please let them know.
It is a hard thing because when else would we really do Nacho Libre? It isn't going to really fit into movie releases.
No,
because it's
unless
just like
unless there's some surprise Nacho Libre 2.
Yeah, unless it's like a case of that. I mean, I don't think the director has worked since like 2016 or 2017 with that movie Masterminds with Wilson and Zach Galifianakis. So I mean, unless we were to do it for like the 20-year anniversary, which would still be, I think, 2025, which is 3 years out for us.
That's achievable. That's achievable. I think
achievable.
We could. I think Ben and Bran or Jalaal, Ben and Jalaal and Bran, BJB. see a movie. I think we could, garner enough clout where
hopefully in like 3 years we can like get us.
It's all part of the 3-year plan.
Yeah, in 3 years there's like a definite like not like high chance, but there's like if we keep growing,
non-zero,
there's a chance that we could get like a Jack Black type. That's the goal one day.
Non-zero.
And like I said, because it's like even if there's another Jack Black movie, Libre wouldn't be like one of the ones you think to cover like right away. Like you'd probably go like, okay, there's Jack Black. You'd probably want to do High Fidelity. You could do just some of his other smaller roles. You could do his like when he's like really going for it as a dramatic actor and like Bernie. Like there's so many other roles from Jack Black that's just like Nacho Libre feels so specific.
But it's so iconic though.
It is very iconic, Jack Black. Not as iconic as I would say as this movie, which is probably the quintessential Jack Black performance.
I think
School of Rock. And
I think so.
This is, and before we get into anything, I'll put all my cards on the table. This is my favorite Jack Black movie. And this might be my favorite performance Jack Black ever gives on film. And this is probably easily one of my like 50 favorite movies, probably even like top 25. I love School of Rock.
School of Rock was great. I don't think I'd ever seen it before. I've seen plenty of scenes from it, but it was nice to watch the whole thing.
You've never seen it in full before?
I know. Strangely
really?
Enough. I don't know why. I
figured as a musician you'd like had seen it. Like this is one of your movies. Because Jalal, this isn't your first time seeing School of Rock.
No, I've seen it a number of times.
I've seen this
also
movie.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I've seen this movie countless times. Like I literally wore out the VHS, the DVD, and I've seen it on TV multiple times. I own it on iTunes. This is a movie I've rewatched a handful of times and know most of the big beats by heart, as well as like the big songs I know this movie like pretty like well. But with that all said, let's just jump into the movie. And Branson, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in with the film historian.
Go for it.
Which I'm not going to give a ton this week. I will just say this is a Richard Linklater film, who, of course, most famously in 1992 or 93, I'm blanking on the year, he produces like one of the most iconic movies of all time with Dazed and Confused. Of course, that's the movie with Matthew McConaughey set in the 1970s, all to the style of rock and roll vibes. And Linklater continues to make films throughout the 90s. He's very much a quintessential voice. This is his sixth film, School of Rock is. And this is also, you're now getting to the point where Jack Black has become the star. Jack Black has previously had films like High Fidelity in 2001. He's now been in Shallow Hal, which was a fairly successful like Jack Black-led comedy. Then you also had Orange County, which was also like led with him. He's like making a name for himself, but he's still not the biggest movie star or comedy movie star in the world. This movie really changes how people look at him as a viable blockbuster star. This film, like I said, this is a film that is not written by Richard Linklater, which is a very unusual thing for him. This is at this point, this is only his second film that he has not written. At least up to the point of 2003. And yeah, this film is very iconic. It ends up branching out. It has a really successful Broadway play that I believe releases the same time as Hamilton, so it gets a little overshadowed. It has been
that's a tough release to be.
Tough act to follow. Really tough act to follow.
Don't forget that one Nickelodeon show that they also had a couple like 7-ish years ago.
Yeah, they had this Nickelodeon show.
That
they have
really?
They have the school now, School of Rock.
Yeah, they have the music schools, the kind of a chain.
Yeah,
it's all over the place in California, at least.
For this generation that all of three of us are in, this is very much a quintessential movie for probably most of our childhoods. It comes out 2003, which means we're somewhere probably between the age of like 5 to 7 when we see this movie. And it's just, it probably for the most part, it's most of ours, again, who are around the age of like 20 to 25. it's probably our first real exposure to Jack Black. I think this is my first Jack Black film I ever saw. Jalal, would you say that is true?
I would say it's mine, but as you know, you're definitely a lot more adept and well-versed in filmography than I am.
Yeah,
in the Jackaverse.
In the Jackaverse.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Branson, would you... I know you hadn't seen the film in full before today. Would you still say this is probably like your earliest memory of Jack Black? Because I'm trying to think. Because Libre's 2005.
Mm-hmm.
He's in King Kong in 2005. Before that, he's in like pretty adult comedies. I mean, we're not obviously
year one.
Tenacious D.
Yeah, no.
And year one's 2009. So at that point, he's Po the Panda from Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah, I was going to say Kung Fu Panda. I just watched all three of those because they were on Netflix. Great trilogy, by the way.
Really good.
Man, I don't remember my first. Actually, you know what? I listened to quite a bit of comedy radio on Pandora.
So is it Tenacious D for you?
Fairly young, so it might have been Tenacious D.
I mean, yeah, Tenacious D has their first studio album, 2001. I feel like that album grows the more famous Jack Black became. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the album, like, Tribute didn't really hit its, like, crazy peak till probably around the time of, like, the movie Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny, which I think is, like, 2006. But with that all said, this film also stars Joanne Cusack, Mike White, who plays Ned, who also writes the film, Sarah Silverman, Miranda Cosgrove, Joey Gatos Jr., Kevin Clark, Rivka Reyes, Robert Tsai, Mariam Hassan, Brian Fodolto, and Lucas Babin, who we're just going to get into right now. Lucas Babin, he plays the character Spider in the movie, which Spider. I don't know if you guys can both recall who Spider is.
Is he the guitarist without a shirt?
He has that half shirt thing.
That dude.
So get ready for this. This is one of those weird internet researches you just find when you're doing a deep dive on the movie. He is currently the DA of Tyler County, Texas.
Okay.
Yes. He sued Netflix in 2020 for their film Cuties. He's a very ardent...
I respect that. I respect the heck out of that.
He's a very ardent, Republican / Trump supporter from all means. His dad is very out there. And it's very interesting that this guy, his only acting career is this movie as Spider.
As the dude in that one band.
Who?
It reminds me a little bit of Dan Janjigian.
I thought of that too because he's also from Texas and he's also... Yeah, it's crazy that he's a DA. I don't know how he won a campaign with like the knowledge of people knowing he played Spider and just being able... If I was running against him...
If I was running, I would
show that picture.
I would be like, I'm Spider.
See, no, I'd show that picture 24/7 and be like, this is the guy I'm running against.
Yeah, and then I'd be like, yeah, you are running against the Spider.
Yeah.
Count your blessings.
But yeah,
you don't have to stick it to that man. He was already sticking it to the man back in 2003.
Yeah, this is a pretty, like I said, iconic cast of a bunch of people who are about to really hit like the public consciousness. Like I said, Jack Black is already there. This takes him over the edge. Sarah Silverman's a little bit up and coming. Like she's relevant in the 90s. This is where she's definitely getting the supporting roles in comedies, and her character is pretty underwritten in this movie, in fairness. That's definitely, I would say, one of the weak parts of this movie. But this is also Miranda Cosgrove before Drake and Josh. Because is she on the Amanda? Is she on the Amanda show?
She was not on the Amanda show.
So her first like TV is like Drake and Josh, like where she's starring.
Yeah.
So this is like really also our first like exposure to Cosgrove, and then like Joanne Cusack's very much playing the 1980s transition from the John Hughes movies of Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, which her brother and her were very notorious for, and kind of lending that credibility over to younger audiences so people can be like, okay, this is the type of vibe this movie's going for. It has that kind of classic throwback Hughes feel. Not saying that this movie feels like a Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, or 16 Candles, but the general idea of coming of age can very much feel reminiscent. And it's also a reflection, I think, of some of the characters that we see in the 1980s now kind of grown up, is what a lot of this movie feels like. But with that all said, let's just get into our discussion of School of Rock. I don't have a hill to die on this week because I posed a different question that we'll get into later on the show. But Branson, Jalal, do either of you guys have a hill to die on that you want to start us off with?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jalal. Dude, we are literally the same person.
Like, apparently. Yeah. I'll start.
Yeah.
So I would say that School of Rock represents what a good arts education can do for kids. It's freeing and allows for self-actualization and a lot of creativity. And I think that's what a good arts education should aim for, on top of teaching the fundamentals of music.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with that.
This is like oddly one of the most inspiring movies for me when I thought about going into teaching. It was this movie.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he's also like a very questionable.
Oh, no, you're not allowed to do half the things in that movie.
Yeah,
but
no, he should be in jail.
I forgot, like, watching this movie again. I was just like, I forgot like how crazy the antics get in this movie. Quickly,
you're not allowed to kidnap a
I mean, it's like it's like Miss Doubtfire, right? Where it's
I would say this is like
kind of endearing.
I would say this even goes a step further.
You think this is more? You think that's more of like a liar revealed who gets into bad hijinks than Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yes, because at least Mrs. Doubtfire's his own kids, and it's an absentee father trying to be a father. This one is like straight up like a guy kidnapping a class full of like 20 kids at like 2 points of the movie.
And I love this movie.
And it's great. It's great. I'm not complaining about it, but
fair.
it's just like there is a little bit more of like it is in Mrs. Doubtfire. It's a character trying to reconnect with his kids. In this one, it is straight up like there is no connection.
A man trying to vicariously live through talented children.
Exactly.
That he brings into his van and takes to dark warehouses.
What's the line he has in the movie where your kids have all really touched me,
and I can only hope that I've touched them as well. Wait,
they just stare at him horrified.
The look of the parents, that like 5-second pause is just a great comedic beat.
It really lets like, you, the viewer, really sit in the awkwardness. Like, it does not let up immediately.
All of their faces. No. It's a perfect joke. It's a perfect setup. Branson, what's your hill to die on?
All right. My hill to die on is, even though this is a strange role in terms of how, he's not immediately likable, Dewey. It takes you quite a bit to really see that he is a good guy in the right context. You just have to get him into something that he's passionate about. But this is one of the most passionate, or like Jack Black's passion is one of the most endearing things about this movie. And I think it's one of his more endearing roles. I mean, I think as Nacho Libre, he's also pretty endearing. He's just kind of a lovable idiot. But in this one, like, it's almost as if Jack Black's just playing himself. And there's so much music that he and Kyle Gass, the other member of Tenacious D, they've put out where, that's the whole point. Like, that's the story that they're telling. I mean, I think of Kickapoo, which is one of my favorite songs by Tenacious D. The whole story of that song is basically the story of School of Rock, where it's this kid who's being brought down by the man and he can't play rock and roll. And then he finds this way to play rock and roll and go away from his family and pursue this thing that he wants to do, or like go away from society, I guess, that's trying to keep him down.
You made this really interesting point where it's so much of Jack Black in the role. I think that's what Linklater's really talented as a director at, just being able to bring in. I mean, look at Dazed and Confused, like Matthew McConaughey in that scene or in that film, just throughout. Like, that's a very, like, you get the Matthew McConaughey like essence in that character. Same with like Ethan Hawke in like Before Sunrise or Before Sunset, or even in Boyhood. Boyhood's another great example where you're just seeing characters just kind of get to exist as almost not characters of themselves as actors, but very much bringing those elements that make them such a good just personality onto screen. And that's like so obvious with Jack Black. You know, one of the things I was listening to a documentary about Richard Linklater, and it was a bunch of actors talking about like working with Linklater on set. And one of the actors mentioned, it's Matthew McConaughey. He mentions while he's filming Dazed and Confused, one of the things Linklater did for him was he gave him a cassette tape and just said, "This is the music I envision your character listening to. I don't want to give you any notes. I want you to listen to this music so you can get into the headspace of who this guy is." And it's something that sounds like a bunch of the actors have worked with Linklater have shared similar experiences. And it really feels like that in this movie. I mean, this movie is so crucial to its portrayal of rock and roll and the type of rock and roll that they play, that we really get an identity of who Dewey Finn is just through the soundtrack alone. It's really a perfect mix of, just like I said, actor, director, and music just coming together, allowing Jack Black to just kind of be a presence in this film and overpower the film for the most part. It's pretty amazing how over the top this character is while still feeling grounded.
That's a razor thin line to walk, I think.
Yeah, because sorry, go for it, Joel.
Oh no, I was going to add on. I think it's also just as important that the movie shows the kind of stuff that Jack Black or as Dewey isn't into, because I remember that one scene where he's getting to know the kids and they're all like, "Oh, I like
Christina
Puff
Aguilera.
Daddy. I like Christina Aguilera," and his just reaction is just, "No, what? No." And I think all of that is just as important as showing what he is interested in, because you could actually get kind of a box of, this is the dude we're dealing with. This is the type of music fan we're dealing with, and watching him kind of change and grow through that is really important.
Through and through rock and roll guy.
Yeah, he's a very much so. There's no leeway for him.
I think the interesting thing about this character, which I alluded to earlier, is the idea of Linklater is somebody as a director that is really concerned about growing old, the passage of time, and just time in general. Like Boyhood is the example of that in his film, where it's literally filmed over 12 years as we see these characters get older. But I mean, Before Sunrise, that trilogy is also like a relationship. Every like 5 years is when you watch those movies. It's like, this is where the relationship was in the 90s. This is where it is 2000. Here's where it is the 2010s. What he's so concerned about in this movie is, and it's the thing that makes this movie work so brilliantly, is Dewey is a legitimately compelling character because he's somebody who's lost and he's somebody that's growing old. I kind of compared him, and I've said the name a few times already, to the characters that are played in like Dazed and Confused, like Matthew McConaughey. He's this guy, you know, that in that movie, Dazed and Confused, he has the line that things I love about high school girls, I get older, they stay the same age, which, you know, it's supposed to be like this representation of like who this guy is as a young high school college guy. And then what we see in the movie, specifically now, you know, School of Rock and Dazed and Confused, I think are about a 10-year difference. It's what if those characters that he's so interested in talking about in Dazed and Confused, in all of his movies, what happens when they grow up? Like, this is very much who the Matthew McConaughey character grows up to be. He's kind of just this guy who doesn't have his life put together. He's kind of a loser. He can't escape like who he is and just like what he's passionate about. And it's just it's the archetype of, let's take the slacker and actually show what happens when this is the type of life you live. And by the time you're 30, you're a loser. Like, that's the point of when we meet Dewey Finn. This is not a character that is actually like, oh, he has a passion and all of this. And like, he's like striving to succeed. It's like, no, he is an actual loser by the start of this film, and he develops as the story goes along to actually like follow his passion, but the passion isn't really there in it. You can tell he loves rock and roll, but he's somebody who just can't put it together because his life's so not put together.
It's sort of untargeted. Like there's this love for rock and roll that he has, but no outlet seems right to him until he finds teaching. It's some way to bring up this new generation of rock musicians. And the movie doesn't just tell you that he loves being a teacher. It shows you, like, you see that he enjoys being a teacher and that he's a good teacher. It's not enough to just enjoy it. You also have to be good. And he's a good teacher. And like the kids like him and respect him. And it's not just the movie kind of forcing them to. It seems natural because he's nice with them. He has a rapport. He has all these fun little nicknames with them. And he, like, if one of the kids isn't feeling really comfortable, like Tamika, she says that people will laugh at her because she's fat, you know. And
well, one of the best scenes in the movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I know, that scene's really sweet where he's like, Tamika, that's not, you have a really good voice. You're gonna show them.
Yeah, and like the Aretha Franklin, like,
yeah,
she's a big woman. Like,
great.
It's just, and he has those scenes with a lot of the characters. I mean, he has it with Mr. Cool, Lawrence, Mr. Cool, the piano player. Like that scene where he's just like, no, you are cool. Like, it's all these little scenes where he gets to connect with each of the characters and really get to know them. It's a pretty amazing supporting cast when you think about it, that none of these children have like acting credentials. And for the most part, I think like basically besides Miranda Cosgrove, none of them are actors. And yet they all give genuinely really sweet performances in this movie that are very memorable. Like all these characters have a personality, from, of course, the main characters in the band to just some of the side characters. One of my favorite characters in the movie is, oh my gosh, what's his name? Fancy Pants, played by Brian Faldudo. He's the stylist in the movie.
Oh,
Billy.
That guy.
Billy.
I think his name's Billy.
He is so funny in this movie. Just getting to just go toe to toe with Jack Black and just insult
the
him like every
sassiness.
so
You're tacky and I hate you.
Yeah, there's just so many
after class
scenes where it just works at such a genius level. And I think it's because they kind of let Jack Black do his thing, but they create such a safe environment for his comedy that you can just tell the laughter that the kids are having is just genuine. That's not acting anymore. It is just simply like Jack Black, like kind of bemusing the kids, and they're all reacting to his craziness.
Yeah, he's never afraid to just be a goof, because that's what Jack Black is. He's just a big weird dude. Which is great. And he's made a huge career out of that. And it's deserved because he's funny, and in movies like this we see how passionate he is.
Yeah, and it works so brilliantly. Like I said, this idea that he's, like I said, the big goof. I think the thing that gets forgotten when you watch this movie that I really picked up on this time, Linklater's capturing that. I mean, he is straight up like that scene where Dewey is singing the song, the Legend of the Rent, and you're just like, in the end of time, and it's like it's slowly panning out, and it's just you're watching the classroom react to him going on for about 2 minutes, just spazzing out, and it's like that is really good direction, because other directors would have either cut that scene short, wouldn't have let Jack Black do that. We are at so much of the film audience for Jack Black, and it's Jack Black just doing his thing, and it's a shtick. There's no denying that that's a shtick that he's doing, but it's really effective in making this character so endearing and likable right away, because this character could go so south so fast if Black isn't doing what Black's doing.
Very true.
Yeah. One of the other aspects I want to talk to you guys about, like just in the brief like review, I think what works so well about this film is it's also just crazy funny. Like, it's crazy funny. This is such a broad comedy. Like, it is very much meant for families. Like, you can enjoy this film at any age, but the laughs never really stop throughout this movie. There's so many just like one-liners that I wrote them down just to name a few. If you guys have any others, feel free to throw them out. One of my favorites is obviously the one we talked about. Your kids have all really touched me. The scene where he's talking to the class when he first gets there, and he's like, "No, it means I was drunk yesterday."
Yeah,
when he's talking about the hangover.
You're alcoholic and you have a disease.
It means I was drunk yesterday.
You're tacky and I hate you.
That's one of my favorites.
This is maybe the one that got the hardest laugh from me. It's when Joanne Cusack walks into the room, and she's like, "Oh, Miss Lemon's heard music," and then Jack Black just pauses and he's like, "No, Miss Lemon is on crack, right, kids?" There's just so many lines like that. It's that line. It's this is the last one I have. It's where he's talking to Mike White's character Ned, and he shows the picture of him like in the Kiss Metal Gear, like get up,
and glam rock. You were cross-dressing.
Yeah, Mike White's delivery of this line is like an all-time classic to me, where he's like, "Dewey, I'm not a satanic sex god anymore. I'm a working stiff, and that's cool."
That's what it was.
There is so little emotion to that character that it just makes it so fun. Every line he has in this film cracks me up. White's really good in this film.
He reminds me a little bit of Rory from Doctor Who. If you guys watch,
I haven't seen it.
Doctor Who in the Matt Smith era. No.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Actually, I did watch.
Jalaal, do you? Am I alone here? Am I the only retro Whovian?
Sorry, back in the 2010s, I was a Supernatural fan. I did not do the Super Wholock thing that Tumblr.
You weren't the Super Wholock. I was only the Wholock. I never got.
I did watch a little bit. I watched the first season of Sherlock. I didn't watch anything else though.
I wasn't fully realized.
What's your favorite scene, Joel? Comedy wise, I should say.
Oh, comedy wise.
Like, what's the laugh for the movie for you?
Honestly, it's kind of dumb, and it's not as big as a lot of the other scenes in the movie, but same scene where it was like Roz comes in and the kids all have to be silent, and then he's trying to teach them through song, and he's just getting things wrong. And then Miranda Cosgrove's like, "No, it's 9." And then he's like, "Yes, it's 9. I was just testing you."
Math
6 times a billion is 6 billion.
I've been laughing at that scene since I was like 6 years old.
Oh yeah. There's so many. There's the cello. You've got a bass. Cello.
Oh, that was the one that I really liked. Cello. You got a bass.
Yeah. There's so many. Like that moment alone, like has like 20 moments that I just laughed. There's so much about the Jack Black mannerisms in this film that we've already touched on. It's like it's the little things that make the character feel real. Like I love when the character of Zack Attack, when he's playing the guitar for the electric guitar for the first time, and he's doing Highway to Hell, and he's like da da da, and then Jack Black's like da da da, yes, like that whole thing for me, just like I don't know why it works, but it works so well, and it's so interesting because
it's funny, but it's also heartwarming because he's like.
He's really
that's one of those it's one of those endearing moments where it's like, yeah, you guys can do this.
Yeah, it's such a great moment because like that scene.
By the way, if my camera just suddenly says EOS webcam utility, it's because I need to charge it because it's already flashing red at me. So
you can't just keep it plugged in?
No, I was trying to figure it out. I'm stuck being mobile.
Weird.
The USB cable only carries data, no power.
Yeah, this moment, man, has like when he's doing the yes, the no, like when he's listening to the guitar, it works so well, and it's something that Jack Black hits in this movie, where it's so over the top, yet it still feels like a character. I don't know many comedic actors that could hit this line really well. I was like sitting there thinking about it today, which was a question I presented you guys with last night, which let me read what that question was again. The question was, Jack Black, the most important comedic star of our generation, was the question I kind of posed to both you and Jalal yesterday. And I think it's just those moments right there where it is like, not many guys can do what Jack Black does, because the physical comedy, like the mannerisms of this character, are so like wrought out in this movie. And I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, no one can do it quite like him. Like, take like other really physical performers, like let's say like a Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's a very physical performer. He's a very physical performer, but he's not exactly a, what would you call it? He's over exaggerated. Like, he is a character that
cartoonish.
Exactly. He's a cartoon essentially for most of the comedies he does. Jack Black's a real guy in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with, like, I was thinking of other guys, like some of the best physical comedians we have. Chevy Chase back in the 70s and 80s. Great physical comedian. Not, again, over the top cartoonish. Like, there's very few guys that just have the mannerisms. And this film just allows Jack Black to talk with his hands.
Yeah, I mean, the shot that you mentioned, yeah, sorry, it's EOS webcam utility talking to you.
Do you have
live.
another webcam?
No, I don't. I should have a backup one or a backup battery. That'd probably be even better. But
we've
just one of the struggles. We're still working out video kinks.
Wait, can you not use your just like webcam from your computer?
I've got double monitors on a desktop.
Gotcha.
No, and I have no idea where my webcam is.
That's fair. We'll go on like this. We'll power through.
Yeah, we'll power through. The show must go on. But
no choice.
The that 2-minute scene where he's singing about the rent was hardcore. I can't remember what the actual name of the song is.
You're not hardcore, I think.
You're not hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
You're not hardcore.
Gotta go.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful melding of all the different comedic strengths of Jack Black. Because you get his funny little sort of voice and his scatting, and watch me hit this solo. Like, his really funny timing, his little interjections. Make a note of that. Do that later. And then like his dance moves and his, like, these really quick jerky twists that he's doing as he's really getting into different sort of moves and different parts of the song. That is like a very important scene, I think, and a very important indicator of the kind of power that Jack Black has.
Agreed.
In the right context, he can do everything.
Agreed. And we've talked enough about the actual like general view of this film. It seems weird this week to do performer MVP, considering how much we've kind of gushed on
figured that out.
Like Jack Black, like he's clearly the MVP of this film. I will give a strong shout out to Miranda Cosgrove in this film. I think she has a really good comedic timing, and she pairs really well off with Jack Black throughout the film. She has some really funny lines, and she just goes toe to toe with him.
The child manager is always a good meme, because the dichotomy of this 10-year-old, like, you guys said you were desperate for an act. Stop lowballing us.
Yeah,
like, that's hilarious.
Honestly, if a 9-year-old with that amount of confidence came up to me and was just like, "I want to be your representation," I would be like, "Okay." I trust you. Knocking on my door, sure.
I trust you, child.
Yeah. So I think we can probably agree it's Jack Black. There's some other people, like I said, I already gave Mike White as Ned Schneebly credit. I will say the weakest part of the film is the Ned Schneebly / Sarah Silverman Patty aspect of the film.
Mm-hmm.
They make her out to be such a bitch. And she's actually a pretty reasonable human being.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking too. It's like, okay, we need to like see her sort of come to some agreement, but it's like, oh no, she just got the door shut on her.
Yeah, I know. Like, she's treated pretty horribly in this film for being pretty much right
reasonable.
Throughout. Like,
like the main reason.
Why y'all booing me? I'm right.
Dewey's not paying rent.
Yeah, Dewey's not paying rent. Like, you could make the argument that's like, oh, okay, they were friends at one point. And like he was living there as a bum already, and then she comes in, but it's still like it's pretty questionable, that whole relationship. And then I mean, like Dewey literally impersonates Ned, like could really risk his career and all that. And like she has a pretty rightful reason to be pissed. And I mean, the film does very much end with her arc is Ned shutting the door on her. And it is supposed to be like, oh, Ned's free. And it's just like, Ned's kind of the worst. Like, he is legitimately the worst in this movie. I find the character funny. He has no backbone. He can't tell Dewey to do anything. And he's just like so passive to his girlfriend. And then when he finally gets like some form of like nerves, he tells her off, not Dewey.
Yeah. It's point. Like, you need to stand up for yourself. Not against your girlfriend who's trying to help you, against the guy that's been bumming rent for like way too long.
And just like stole your identity and like really
stole your identity.
Quite literally.
It's literally like the one aspect of the movie that I'm like, okay, they didn't know what to do with the female character in this movie of Patty. Let's jump into In a Nutshell, which is where we discuss the film within the context.
Can I say something right before we move on?
Go for it.
One of my favorite jokes in the movie is that Dewey steals Ned's identity, but he doesn't even know how to spell Schneebly.
Call me Mr. S.
You just call me Mr. S.
Schneebly. It's actually pronounced Schneeble.
I'm pretty sure there's an S in it. Good enough for me.
Schneeble.
Hey, bureaucrats don't get paid enough.
But in the category of In a Nutshell, discuss the film within the context of the year it is released. So I did a few categories. I did comedies of 2003 and 2003 movies. So let's just start with the more broad of the two. 2003 movies. Pretty crazy year for movies. This one, the top 10 are Return of the King, Finding Nemo, Matrix Reloaded, Pirates of the Caribbean, Bruce Almighty, Last Samurai, Terminator 3, Matrix 3, Bad Boys 2. A lot of sequels in there and a lot of franchises in there.
Sounds like a normal year for me.
Yeah, it sounds like the more
things change, the more things stay the same.
It's a pretty relevant year in the sense that, like, okay, this is a very modern Hollywood looking year, with the one exception being Bruce Almighty, which is like, that's pretty crazy that Bruce Almighty made it into a top 10 for being a comedy. Now, true, it was like Jim Carrey at the height of it, but let's now, I think, transition to comedies of 2003. This is a really interesting point, and my argument here is that this is really the transition of the 90s to the 2000s. If you think of some of the biggest comedians in the world at this point and the movies they're making, this is a year where you're seeing those films and you're also seeing the people who are about to hit. So let's look at some of them. Haunted Mansion, that's obviously Eddie Murphy. He's been a star, and this is kind of starting to be even further decline that star may be coming back. That star is fading. He has that rise for a little bit because he has the Showgirl, so it is a little bit of coming back, but it's just like falling. Shanghai Nights, which is an Owen Wilson, Jackie Chan comedy, which is a sequel already. Here's where it starts getting a little bit more interesting. You have films like Elf, which is Will Ferrell's like huge first film, really. Like, that's a huge like Will Ferrell film, and that ends up becoming the landscape of comedy, basically.
You know,
and that has lasting power.
Yeah, I've watched that movie thousands of times. I don't think a single time was voluntarily.
I love that.
I like that movie too. I like it too. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
Every time I watch Elf, it's against my will.
No, every time. All I'm just saying is that a lot of my teachers decided to put on Elf instead of teaching a lot of the time.
That's fair.
Hey.
It's like the first Will Ferrell movie that like indicates like who Will Ferrell is about to be, and he goes on like one of the most epic 10-year runs of comedy. I mean, he has soon after Elf is Anchorman. He does Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, Kicking and Screaming, The Other Guys. I mean, he just goes on for like a 10-year stretch of just like comedy after comedy.
Bang, bang, yeah,
kidding. It's pretty crazy. Then you also this same year. You have Old School, which is, again, Vince Vaughn, Luke Wilson, and Will Ferrell. So, again, this is Vince Vaughn really taking the reins back in comedy again. Then you have Bringing Down the House, which is Steve Martin. Again, kind of the old school comedy like that they're still in there. And this is where I think the argument for like the 90s power is starting to fade. Mike Myers makes Cat in the Hat this year. Really huge fall from grace from being in Austin Powers to Cat in the Hat. And
Which
then
is funny that you say that, because it's kind of the same sense of humor in both those movies, both those sets of movies.
It's they're both
Mike Myers being
doing
dirty.
a performance.
Yeah.
They're both going for a performance. And then the last one is Bruce Almighty, which again is just like, that's like kind of the last, like, not hurrah for Jim Carrey, but it's like the last big comedy film of his that I feel like hits for quite a while for him. Like, he's had a weird comedy career, and I feel like Bruce Almighty's kind of like the last, not breath of it necessarily, but it is like kind of the last, like, huge one that is in the cultural zeitgeist. It feels like if you were to take his run from like Dumb and Dumber, The Mask in 94, Bruce Almighty feels like the correct end chapter of that, like, comedy chapter, essentially, if that makes sense. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Is it just me? Am I just going to go on Jim Carrey for another 10?
I'm down to just listen to Ben talk about 2003 movies for another hour.
It's your name on the podcast for now until Jalal and I activate our sleeper agents.
Separate. I almost said segregate.
No, we're not that kind of podcast.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet?
Not yet. Bring Josh back on for another few weeks, and we might be getting
Way to dox your friend, bro.
Yeah, he's
no, not like that.
He's advocated segregating Gungans specifically.
He's a very controversial
taking advantage of them and their resources.
You should have heard his take last week for when we did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's like, I don't think Tom Hanks is that good of an actor.
Whoa.
I was just like, what do I do with this? Like, what do I do on air to that?
He's like what's the name of the like the heel in wrestling?
He's a heel.
He's a heel
90% of the time. He plays it up so much, and I'm just like, on air, I'm just like, I don't know how to like deal with this moment.
Next subject.
I'm like, I can't convince you Tom Hanks is like one of the most acclaimed actors of all time.
He's one of the most acclaimed actors of all time.
I can't convince you he's good.
Is that argument from Community? Like, is Nick Cage a good actor or not?
but
like, way less interesting.
Ben and I have seen too many Nick Cage movies to say no.
Yes, I was still actively, religiously listening to this podcast while you guys were doing the Nick Cage stuff.
Dude, that was so fun.
And we haven't touched a Nick Cage movie since. Okay.
Yeah.
Branson, you ready for your new favorite segment?
Yes.
Jalal, you haven't gone to do this yet. It's called Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mount Rushmore. If you don't know how this works, basically think of Mount Rushmore. There's 4 presidents on it. We're making a movie, Mount Rushmore, where I tried finding categories where I believed that this would be on Mount Rushmore if you like tailor-made Mount Rushmore to fit
for
this
a very
movie.
Specific cliche detail in a movie.
Yeah. It doesn't really make any sense. It's a game I like. We love talking about legacy. We love talking about, I'm a sports guy, so I love the idea of like, who's the GOAT? What are the best? Like, who's in the Hall of Fame? That's what Mount Rushmore really is. So let me ask you these. I had 3 just before we start. Branson, did you have one this week? So I know
I got one. I feel like I have 2.
Okay.
And I feel like one of them might be the same.
Okay, let's just start with the most obvious one, which I think very much could be the same. Is this on the Mount Rushmore of Jack Black movies?
That was not the one that I had, but
okay.
I think definitely yes. This one, Nacho
Yeah,
Libre.
sorry, let me read the nominees.
Oh,
Gulliver's Travels,
High Fidelity, Nacho Libre, School of Rock, Tenacious D, Kung Fu Panda Trilogy, Be Kind Reline, Tropic Thunder, Bernie, Jumanji. All of those films I feel like are pretty easy contention. This isn't a comprehensive list of all of them. Is it safe to say that 4 spots on Mount Rushmore, this has to be on the Jack Black Mount Rushmore?
Definitely.
I would agree. Would you agree, Joel?
Without a doubt, this is his best movie.
I would agree. I think the 4 are probably, I think it's School of Rock, I would probably say Nacho Libre.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably argue High Fidelity because that's like the one that makes him the biggest, and then like, or not the biggest, that's the one that like him as a leading man and everyone kind of understands how good he is. And then you can really have your pick and choose of the fourth. I'd personally lean to Bernie because I think it's his best performance. But I think it's safe to say that this is on the Mount Rushmore of best Jack Black movies. I think anyone who says no would be kind of crazy.
That just means they haven't seen the movie, but they've seen all the other Jack Black movies.
Branson, how about you jump into one of your Mount Rushmores?
Okay, I got it. Sorry, I was responding to a message. I've got music films.
Okay, I have a similar category, but not quite the same.
So I'll share some nominees: Sing Street, Frank,
I love that movie.
Mr. Holland's Opus, Amadeus, Whiplash.
Yeah.
Does School of Rock fit on Rock Dog? That was a recent one from I don't even know, but I know that it exists. Does School of Rock belong on the music films Mount Rushmore?
So are we counting like musicals?
Not musicals.
Not musicals. Films specifically about music, either forming the band,
forming the band,
becoming part of a band, something,
or just like something like that. I agree. This is where it's hard because you'd have to like. There's other films you didn't mention, like Blues Brothers would have to be on there for me. Like, for me, yes. I don't know if in reality it actually makes like the four. I think it would. I think it has a pretty good argument for being
subjectively
on the list.
Yes, objectively no. Which is defensible.
Amadeus has to be on there. I would argue that Blues Brothers has to be on there. I think those are like the two definitive locks. I think there's some other ones where it now can really become taste. I think a lot of people would probably put Sing Street or maybe even Whiplash on there. I'd probably say that I think if we have 4 openings, I would say School of Rock gets on there. Jalal, what about you?
I would put School of Rock on mine, but that's just because I hold the movie and its like messages and themes in that high regard. Like, is it the absolute best movie about music? Could be. Depends on who you ask. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Subjectively, sure, why not? Objectively, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard thing because then I'm now also thinking like you have This Is Spinal Tap, which could easily be in there.
Ooh.
But I think so. I'm going to lean towards yes, but it's like on that bridge, like the 4th or 5th, right? Like it's not like solidified on Rushmore like some of the other movies are, but it's in the discussion. I'll go next because I'll tie it into your music one. Is School of Rock on the Mount Rushmore for best use of a Ramones song in a movie? Here are some of the nominees that I found. So obviously there's 2 in this movie in School of Rock. There's Rock and Roll Clock and there's
Rock and Roll McDonald's.
No, not Rock and Roll Shut up. What's the
Hungry?
What is it called? Oh my gosh. Blitzkrieg goes to Bonzo goes to Blitzkrieg. Not Blitzkrieg. Bonzo goes to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
that's the song that plays.
You were crossing Blitzkrieg Bop.
Blitzkrieg Bop. But so anyway, the other nominees are Spider-Man: Far From Home for "I Want to Be Your Boyfriend," also Spider-Man: Homecoming for Blitzkrieg Bop, Shrek 3 for "Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio," Jackass the Movie for "California Sun," the Royal Tenenbaums for "Judy Is a Punk," Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for Blitzkrieg Bop, and the movie Rock and Roll High School, which the soundtrack is completely done by the Ramones.
Well, I mean,
so that one has to be on the Mount.
Yeah, that has to be.
That's on the Mount Rushmore because
they did the soundtrack.
Like, if I was, can I answer this discussion?
Yeah,
I think I would not put I would have to choose. I love both of those Spider-Man movies. We've talked about this, but they incorporate their Ramones song the exact same way as the ending credits song. So it's more like
no.
Does that count?
Spider-Man: Homecoming uses it.
Oh no, that's the opening.
It's the opening when he's swinging around Queens.
Yeah, but Spider-Man: Far From Home, it's just the ending song, isn't it? I think it's just the ending.
Yeah, and Far From Home, it's the very end when they're talking.
Then I would pick Homecoming over Far From Home.
I would agree.
Yeah. That's my take on that.
I would agree. I think for me, the movies are probably this movie, School of Rock, for the Bonzo Goes to Pittsburgh montage. I think Spider-Man: Homecoming. Obviously, Rock and Roll High School, which is their soundtrack. I personally, my fourth is probably Jackass the movie, California Sun.
I don't know, man. Jimmy Neutron. Every time I think of the Ramones, I think of that scene where they're all building the rocket ships.
That's so good. Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, the movie. That's a throwback. I'm gonna throw my hat in for Royal Tenenbaums.
That was my short list too. I'm like, that could be it.
Is it Judy was a punk rock, or is
Judy
it
is
Gina
a punk?
was? Yeah,
Judy is a punk.
Judy's a punk. It's great because it fits what's on screen, but it's also such a great joke as well, and it's so quick. You only hear as much as you need to.
Yeah.
In Royal Tenenbaums, and I love that.
Agreed.
It's not overstaying, but it's not taking advantage of, we got the rights to a Ramones song.
I would very much
there tastefully.
Agree. Let's do the last one because I have a feeling, Branson, you have to start wrapping up soon.
Yeah, I've got one.
I have one that has to end it though, so just be aware. So to go for it,
I've got hard-nosed female teachers / bosses. Of course, Roz is on there from School of Rock. Some other contenders are M in James Bond, specifically Judi Dench.
Good one.
Trunchbull from
really good one. Really good.
Roz in Monsters Inc.
I was thinking Roz from Monsters Inc. too.
Those are the contenders that I have. Just to keep your brains a-bubbling.
I would put Nurse Fletcher from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on there.
Oh, okay.
Personally, no, I'm not putting Roz Mullins in the hard ass category of teachers / authority figures. I don't think she
hard
quite
ass.
gets in there.
I said hard nose.
Hard nose. I don't think she gets on mine. Anyone else? Does she get on your Jalaal?
You know, if her character, so I don't know. I think the entire point of her character was kind of to examine how, living our lives less constricted can lead to a lot more happiness, and we can still do our job fairly well. We don't have to be that. And I think just because that, she is basically the way that they show that throughout the movie. I think that takes away from her being a hard-nosed, her main character trait.
She's the divergent path almost. Exactly. If these kids aren't allowed. Yeah, that makes sense. And I just thought
I would say no for mine.
I would agree with Jalaal.
I agree no, because I just thought of another great contender. Technically, this was a book first. But I think the three that I gave, M and James Bond, Trunchbull, and Roz and Monsters Inc. are three. And my fourth one, Umbridge from
Umbridge, has to be on there. I would probably agree. I think Umbridge, Nurse Fletcher.
I kept getting this shot in my head that started with high heels clicking through a hallway really fast, and then a pan up to the camera pans up to the person that it is, and I couldn't place what shot it was. And it's Umbridge, the one where she's walking down the hallway and she flicks her wand and separates the two kissing students.
Yep.
That was the shot.
She's on the list. This one for our last Mount Rushmore, and if this one goes a little long, I can cut one of the categories, just FYI. This one we have to definitively put the 4. Who is Jack Black on the Mount Rushmore for 21st century comedic stars?
Yes.
So I'm gonna give you the list. Will Ferrell, Adam Sandler, Jack Black, Ben Stiller, Steve Carell, Paul Rudd, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Andy Samberg, Sacha Baron Cohen, Johnny Knoxville, Melissa McCartney, Vince Vaughn, and Owen Wilson, I think, are all contenders.
Oh, and my gosh.
I forgot Galifianakis.
Can I start this?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what sets Jack Black apart from pretty much everybody else on that list.
Wait, okay. Can I pause you real quick?
Sure.
I think the easiest way is let's put on the ones who are definitive on the list. For the 21st century, let's figure out how many spots we have open. So can we just agree? I would say Will Ferrell is a guaranteed.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I think he has to be.
So that's one spot filled up.
Instead of 21st century, could we change it to 2000 through 2013 maybe?
Because then Andy Samberg and Amy Poehler. See, some of them are hard. So let's go through. Ferrell is definitive. Does Adam Sandler get on the list?
I'm gonna say no. I think he would have gotten on
like a 90s list.
A 90s list. Absolutely.
He's the biggest comedic star at this point. I don't know if he's a first round guy like on the Mount Rushmore.
I'm thinking of reception though.
That's
People
fair.
really liked Adam Sandler, and if you like his movies, I think there are some great ones that he did that are more in the 21st century. 50 First Dates is my wife's absolute favorite movie. And I think he's great in that one, but something about like the Billy Madison, the Happy Gilmore.
So he's definitively on this list. We can't do this for each one. Ben Stiller, yes or no? Impulse. I would say no.
No.
Steve Carell, I would actually maybe lean yes.
I lean in yes too.
So he's a chance on the list. I think he's a chance.
I mean, I'm thinking Office.
I'm counting movies. Dude, I am defining it as movies.
Just movies? If
like
it's just movies, then no. If we include Office, then absolutely yes.
I think that's fair. So I'm going to say no as well. Paul Rudd, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
Great.
No.
Tina Fey, if it's TV, yes. If it's not, I'd say no. Same with Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler.
Yeah.
Andy Samberg, I think it's too young of a career, so I'm going to say no.
Breaks my heart to say that because I've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
This one I'm going to fight for. I think Sacha Baron Cohen has to be on the list.
Yeah,
he has Bruno Barat, like the dictator, like he has like all of it. I think he has to be on the list.
Yeah, and the thing about that is all that stuff stopped by like 2010, so I'd agree.
Yeah, I think he has to be on the list. So those are 2 spots. Johnny Knoxville, I think it's safe to say he's his own type of comedy for Jackass, so I'll say no.
He's a reality star.
Melissa McCartney? Does McCartney make it on the list for you, Jalal?
What was she in?
Melissa McCartney's from Bridesmaids. The Heat, all those movies.
All of that I'd say is like later in the mid to later 2010s though.
That's fair.
Melissa, there should be a woman on the Mount Rushmore of comedy, but I don't think it's Melissa. Really?
Honestly, personally, just sheer bias because I got done watching a show that she just wrote called Girls 5 Eva. I'm gonna pick Tina Fey because I don't know. I like the way Tina Fey writes, and I
agree, but it's not TV.
I know, but if out of the stuff that you listed,
you're right. She does write Mean Girls.
She does write Mean Girls, and she was in it. And
Battery died again.
Okay, then
And the thing about Mean Girls is, if we're talking about movies that have caused an impact on our specific generation and the younger millennials before us, that's probably the one I'd pick.
Okay, then let's say Tina Fey, let's say Will Ferrell, let's say Sacha Baron Cohen are the 3. We have 1 spot. So I think the 2 that we were
Jack
fighting
Black.
between, it's Jack Black, Adam Sandler,
Steve
or
Carell.
Vince Vaughn, actually.
Oh, so we're not doing Steve Carell?
I would say no. It's between the Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Sandler, or Jack Black. So out of the 4, I would probably actually lean Jack Black.
I would too, because I think when I think of Vince Vaughn, I think of him together with Owen Wilson in things.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson
I feel they can't not be together.
That's fair. Owen Wilson was the tough one where I'm like, he could
Exactly.
actually be the 4th one. But no, I think the list is Will Ferrell. I think Tina Fey, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Jack Black.
See, the reason I would put Jack Black on this because the one thing that he has that I don't think anybody else on that list has is that he hosted the Kids' Choice Award once.
Melissa did too.
Oh, did she?
I think Melissa.
Well, I'm wrong. So
I'd love to see a Sacha Baron Cohen hosted Kids' Choice Awards.
That would be insane.
All right, let's finish. I'm going to wrap this show up for you and your wife, Branson.
Oh, thanks.
So let's finish this. Let's just do the 5 favorite scenes of the movie ranked. We'll go real quick. I can do my list and tell me if you disagree with my list. My number 5 is the Stevie Nicks song at the bar.
I'd put that higher personally, but
very funny. I think 5 is a good spot.
I think my number 4 is Dewey talking to the girl about her weight.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just such a sweet scene that really encompasses the character of Dewey and the perfect relationship that he has with these kids. I think it's a really sweet, tender moment. My number 3 is the Bonzo goes to Blitzkrieg music monologue when they're all just like learning and they're handing out the music and he's doing like the history of rock and roll, and you have Zach Attack like watching the Who like break his guitar and like Jimi Hendrix. I love that montage. It's one of my favorites in the movies.
So far, I think I'd only swap 3 and 4. But so far, there's a good list.
Number 2 is the band comes together. That's the scene where he's like getting them all on the instruments, like realizing what he has in them.
That's my personal number 1.
That was almost my number 1. My number 1 had to be Teacher's Pet, though.
With
Teacher's Pet is the end song.
The Battle of the Bands, where they're actually at the battle.
Song.
Agree.
Got it.
That's my number 1. That's my favorite moment. And then where he's getting the band. I pretty much agree with your list, Ben. Aside from that little swap of 3 and 4.
Was there any other scene that anyone wanted to add on to possibly be considered? Did you have another scene?
I had on mine. I think it's basically part of the same thing of the band getting together, but the quote unquote auditions that he's holding just with the kids at their desk. It's like, hey, what can you do? Yeah.
That's another really great scene. I love the scene where they fake cancer. They're all dying. That's
really funny... that was the other one I had on there.
That's a really funny scene. I think
Stickatolaminitis.
Yeah, those are like the definitive scenes. Maybe the scene where he's talking about the man is a really funny scene.
The man.
She's the man.
But so that's the movie scenes ranked. Movie pairings, I didn't have much. The only one I could really think of was Sing Street. If you like this movie, you'll probably like Sing Street.
Well, on the same vein, the dude that made Sing Street also made this other movie that I adore for the first 2/3 of it, and then like it at the last third. It's called... Wow, I just did all that introduction. I don't remember the name's called.
I'll look it up for you, buddy.
Called
Sing Street Director.
Begin Again.
Oh, he did Begin Again? Is that the one with Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley?
I really love that. That's another one of my favorite music movies. I'd say it's a big comfort movie for me. Only gripe is that the last third is not nearly as interesting as everything that came before.
Yeah.
But that's my own personal take.
That's a good one.
Sing Street's a great recommendation.
I love Sing
Street. I would add Frank. It's a little bit more. It's a little.
I've never seen that one. I know it, but I've heard it.
It's a little more strange. It's not a comedy first and foremost, but it is a really interesting story of this band breaking up and coming together and like the ups and downs. And there's some really interesting music in it. It's definitely not mainstream, but it's there's some. If you give it a chance, you might like it.
I have to check that out. I've heard of it. So those are our movie recommendations, which gets us to the last segment on our show. Branson, you ready? The Great Debate! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debate. You know how this show works. It's a debate show. We just talk about what we have as our questions. I'll pass this week because I actually did not come with a question. So, Jalal, you want to go first?
I didn't come up with a question either.
Okay, then I have a question if need be. Branson, what's your question?
My question is if there was any actual like famous musician, either a single musician or like the lead singer of a band or something like that would take the place of Jack Black in this film, or like a modern recreation of this film, who would do a great job, not as a comedic actor, but as a band member first?
You know,
I have an answer.
I have an answer too.
Don't say Olivia Rodrigo.
No,
I like her too, but
no, she's not the answer. Because I wanted to go rocked in like honor of this movie. It's weird because he's a guy that I actually just saw in a movie earlier this year that I didn't realize he had like a pretty great comedic sensibilities to him. He's somebody that's collaborated with Jack Black specifically as a member of Tenacious D. It's David Grohl from Foo Fighters.
Yep, Dave. I knew you were going to say Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl. Sorry, Dave Grohl.
Mm-hmm.
David Grohl. That's my Halloween costume.
Dave Grohl.
He was in a movie this year called Studio 66.
He's the lead singer of the Boo Fighters.
Hey, that's so good.
I knew there was one.
The Boo Fighters. I don't know.
The Boo Fighters. Oh, that's awesome. Love
he
you,
was
Jalaal.
in one movie
Love you
called
too, Branson.
Studio 666 this year. I didn't think it was particularly good. He kind of shocked me with his comedic sensibilities. I actually thought it quite akin to Jack Black. He's a guy who's been in multiple successful bands. He's always seemed like a really genuine, nice guy in his interviews. He's a guy who can play any instruments. He's always been a leader. He's in Nirvana as the drummer. Like, I think he's just a guy that can naturally do it all. And like I said, he just genuinely seems like a nice band leader and a nice guy. So I'm going to say David as my answer.
That's a really, really good answer. I think I have a real answer and then a cheatsy answer. Okay. I was going to say this is a man who has proven himself as someone who has a good sense of humor about both his music and just about life. It's evident in this band's music. And he also just seems like a cool dude. Rivers Cuomo.
I knew you were going to say that, and I was just thinking, like, Rivers Cuomo's a weirdo, dude.
He is weird, and I think he could do it. Actually, I mean, really, anyone from Weezer, I think, could do it, but Rivers Cuomo especially. He's just funny, and he's great with crowds. I like all the times I've seen his crowd work at concerts is really fun. And then my cheatsy answer, because technically he is a musician, but he's also a comedian, Weird Al.
Not a bad pick. I was actually thinking Sandler was my second pick.
Mm-hmm. What?
Adam Sandler, because he's actually a musician. Like he'd done his comedy, like musician albums. Like
I guess
he was my second. So like funny pick. I actually kind of respect that pick of Weird Al and Sandler. But I think I'm happy with my David Grohl answer. Joel, do you have a guy?
So I know this is entirely hypothetical, and it's just a it's just a fun what if, but it's weird. Probably because under the pressure of all these spotlights, I can't think of the name of anything music related right now. But actually, this is dumb. I'm just gonna keep picking Jack Black because the movie doesn't really. It's hard to make it work without him, like because he's just the right amount of zany and weird. Where him kidnapping a bunch of kids is still kind of charming, and it still kind of works. Like you put Weird Al there, and now we're just thinking. Now we're thinking a little bit.
We're looking at that mustache a little bit.
Yeah,
too
exactly.
much.
You look at the mustache, the unmarked white van. You're kind of like,
what's Weird Al doing here?
Yeah, why do we cast Weird Al? You know?
It starts getting a little questionable.
Even with Dave Grohl, I'm just like, dude, you're dope, but at the same time, you look a little scary for these kids.
It's a fair point. I really like that that's your answer, Jalaal, because it leads perfectly into how we'll close the show with my question. Who would be the exact opposite type of actor that you could cast in School of Rock while still somehow making the movie work, even if it's a complete tonal shift from Jack Black?
Terrence Fletcher Whiplash.
Is that J.K. Simmons?
Yeah.
Him throwing the chairs at the children would be amazing.
Why I just threw a chair at you?
I don't know.
1, 2. Count with me.
So J.K. Simmons is your answer. That just fundamentally changes what School of Rock is.
Oh, yeah.
That does work. That does work.
Branson, what about yours?
Oh, boy. That's really tough. Ben, you go first. I'm going to see if I can mold this a little bit.
I wanted to think about an actor who's like completely tonally different than him, but also uses his body in a way that Jack Black uses his body. Very physically demanding actor, somebody who talks with his hands a lot, somebody who's really just expression like driven. Like this is a guy who just like, you can feel the passion in everything he does. And it's such an intensity with him. He kind of channels that same Jack Black intensity, but where Jack Black uses it for comedy, this guy definitely uses it for just like intensity and just dramatic elements. And this is also just an actor who just can like, he's also a very physically imposing force, much as like how Jack Black is kind of a physically big guy. This guy is physically big but tall. And I'm saying Adam Driver. Adam Driver in School of Rock would be such a different type of movie, yet he almost matches the same type of energy that Jack Black does it. He just does it completely without the comedic sensibility of Jack Black. That's not to say Adam Driver is not funny. I actually think Jack Black, I actually think Driver is crazy funny. But it's just such a different type of funny with him. He would do something where it is like kind of like you said with J.K. Simmons. It's just so overly intense that's kind of scary to the kids. And I think there's a really good comedy in it. My other answer would be Arnold Schwarzenegger playing like a very similar type
kindergarten
cop. But those are my two answers. So Adam Driver is my real answer. Branson, what about you?
I've got a pretty crazy one that just came to me. Clint Eastwood.
That is a crazy answer.
That is different from Jack Black.
That is very tonally different from Jack Black.
It's the farthest away that I could get from Jack Black, and I was like, I'm gonna go with Eastwood.
I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this, Clint.
Now you might be asking yourself, did I count 5 measures or 6?
You think Jack Black knows how to count measures?
I hope so.
Finn. I hope Jack Black does. I'm not sure about Dewey Finn, to be honest.
I don't know about Clint Eastwood. Though, you know what's interesting? I just learned this. Clint Eastwood actually helped compose the score for Unbreakable.
Really?
I didn't know he did. He plays guitar, apparently.
Wow.
See?
So, yeah, good pick.
This works better than this. That works even better than I thought.
I would kill to see that movie in theaters. I would pay so much to just see him play his character from like Unbreakable or Cry Macho or Dirty Harry, just like growling at the kids. All right. And a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. That would be a pretty good. I'd pay. That's a good answer, Branson. Really respectful.
5 measures or 6?
It's a great answer. I have to give it to you.
Oh, thank you.
With that said, that's the show for School of Rock.
That's the show.
Branson, thank you for joining us this week on School of Rock. Jalal, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
And for the rest of the month, I got a pretty easygoing month ahead. I'm doing my top 10 favorite summer streamer movies. So movies that have been released to streaming services. That's my next week podcast. Ooh. And then the week after, Chris Harris and I are going to be talking about our 10 most anticipated movies for the fall 2022. So that will be September to December, our most anticipated releases. So be sure to check that out. Thank you guys for supporting. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. My name is Ben Friedman. To my left is Jalaal Ahmad. And over computer is Branson Indelicato.
Coming from you, beamed down straight from Starlink.
This has been and Brand See a Movie. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Godspeed.